Bonjour, mon nom est Nadia Roche, je suis journaliste culturelle pour Radio-Canada. Il me fait plaisir aujourd'hui d'animer cet entretien dans le cadre du 37e Salon du livre de la Côte-Nord, essentiellement virtuel, vous l'aurez deviné. Et c'est un bonheur pour moi aujourd'hui de m'entretenir avec Cathy Reichs, anthropologue judiciaire et autrice américaine. Elle est née à Chicago. Elle travaille fréquemment avec le FBI, avec le Pentagone aussi, donc c'est pas n'importe qui, avec le succès international de Bond et la présence de ses livres sur pratiquement toutes les listes de best-sellers dans une quarantaine de pays pour chacun de ses livres. On peut dire que Cathy Reichs est vraiment au sommet de son art. La mort sans visage et son 19e roman, Bones, la série judiciaire qui est adaptée de sa série et diffusée au Québec sur Série+. Aussi, en 2019, en novembre, elle est devenue membre honoraire de l'Ordre du Canada. Alors, c'est vraiment un honneur de discuter avec elle aujourd'hui. Cathy Reichs, welcome and thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. As you know, the theme this year for the Salon du Livre, which is usually in Sept-Îles, this year it's going to be mainly online. I heard of a pandemic. Well, the theme this year is TERRITOIRE. So we thought that first you could tell us about your experience because you've been on the North Shore territory. You've been in Sept-Îles in the 90s. How did you find it and what were you here for?
I was there for an exhumation. It was a case I was working on for the Laboratoire de Sciences Judiciaires de Médecine Légale. Wasn't called that back then. It had a different, slightly different name, but we were doing an exhumation. And so I believe it was like January. So I am a Southerner. I am sitting in South Carolina right now. I apologize for the noise from the landscapers. So January in Sept-Îles was quite a shock for me. It was very, very, very cold, but they had set up a tent over the grave sites and put heaters in there. So it was one of the easiest. And I thought, oh, this is going to be frozen ground. I don't know how we're going to do. Why are we doing this in January? And they had set up heaters in this tent, and it was really very, very, very warm in the tent. And the ground was one of the easiest exhumations I've ever done. So both because of the help of the people there and everyone was just so gracious and so helpful, and it was very professionally done. That's the main thing I remember. And
what about the territory? Did you visit a bit or you just worked there?
We really didn't have time. I think we stayed overnight, one night in a hotel, which was fine. And I think it was the only hotel maybe. And then we flew out again the next day when we were finished. So we didn't get a lot of time to see much of it. It seemed beautiful, seemed very wooded and nice.
Lots of space. Yes. Well, since we're talking about Quebec, could you tell us a little bit more about your relation with Montreal and the province of Quebec? Because it's often mentioned in your stories and you worked here, right?
Long time. I maybe shouldn't say how long, but going back, I think I started in 1988. So it's been over 30 years. So I worked at the Laboratoire de Sciences Judiciaires de Médecine Légale, had a shorter name back then. And I was the anthropologue judiciaire. So I would do all of the cases for bodies that just weren't in good enough condition for autopsy. If they were burned or mutilated or mummified or decomposed or dismembered or perhaps just bones. So that was what I would be brought in to work on.
How did you like Quebec? Do you miss it now?
Oh, I do miss it because I haven't been able to come for the last year because of COVID. Obviously, I liked it a lot because I kept coming back for 3 decades. So I liked it very much.
Okay, so now let's talk about you. You just said it. You were a forensic anthropologist, but you started your career as an archaeologist. Yeah. What brought you to writing then?
Well, as a university professor, you always have to write. You're writing scientific articles or journal articles or textbooks. And I did that for many years. You have to do that to be promoted and tenured. Why did I decide one day to write fiction? It was 1994. It was spring break. I remember I had some time on my hands. I had been promoted to full professor, so I could do whatever I wanted. Excuse me. We have pollen. It's spring here in the Carolinas, so pollen everywhere.
Not yet here.
Not yet here. It's going to be 88 degrees here Fahrenheit today.
Whoa,
which
okay.
is insane. It's way too warm for this early.
Climate change.
Maybe. So I was free to do something new. I had a story idea because I had finished working on a case that had some interesting elements, a serial murder case in Montreal. So I decided to take the freedom, sorry, and the opportunity and the idea. So I decided to sit down and write a thriller. Of course, my main character would be a forensic anthropologist because it's easier than making everything up. Yeah, so it took 2 years. And then, because I was teaching full time. I was commuting from the Carolinas to Montreal. So,
and you had kids too.
And I had kids. They were bigger kids at that point, but still, they're needy. You know, kids are needy. So they were in their teens.
Must have been very challenging to find the time to write and do everything else.
Yeah, I wrote on weekends, on vacations, on days that I didn't have to go on campus to the university. I would just write every chance I got. And I didn't tell anyone I was doing it, because if you write a novel in an English department, you know, you're a hero. If you write a novel in a science department, you're a little bit suspect. So I didn't tell anyone till it was finished. And then I did what you shouldn't do if you're a brand new writer and you're hoping to be a debut author. I just mailed it in. I mailed it to Scribner, which actually turned out to be my publisher. But yeah, you probably should have an agent if you're brand new.
And how did the people react around you and your colleagues and your family?
Yeah, well, my family, there was a lot of eye rolling. Mom's writing her novel, you know. Yeah, they don't do that anymore. I didn't tell anybody. So when it finally came out, the university, my colleagues at the university, the reaction was a little bit cool. It's like, oh, great, you wrote a novel. It's not going to count as academic, of course. But at the lab, everyone was really the only people annoyed were the people because I drew on people at the lab for characters in the book. And some were pretty obvious. And so I thought, ooh, but the only people annoyed were the ones that weren't in the book, you know. So people were very pleased with it and happy to come and give me advice on future books. So they were really great. Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. That's another question I had. Like, what do you like to bring from your work to your novels? People, I guess, but also cases.
I like all three elements, the characters. I love bringing the old characters back. And that's challenging because you have to keep changing them and changing their, you know, what's going on around them. I like creating new characters. That's a lot of fun. I'm starting the next book now, and I'm starting my outline with who the new characters will be. And setting, to me, setting is really important. I use a lot of realism and actual places. I never write about a place that I haven't visited. And then storyline, of course, the bottom line is your plot. What is your storyline? And in writing thrillers, that has to be thriller readers are very critical readers and very, very smart readers. So you can throw in false clues, but you have to tie them off and they have to make sense. And you have to bring it all together, hopefully with twists that surprise the reader at the end. And you can't rely on coincidence. You have to, it all has to really make sense and be integrated.
Is it easier for you today to do all this than it was at first? Or you put more pressure on yourself now?
Well, some things are easier. Some things are harder. The first book, I could just make up anything I wanted to. I created the characters. I didn't have to remember their backstories and their histories. Some things were harder back then because I'd never written a novel and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just trying to write a book of the kind that I would like to read. because I don't have any training really in creative writing. So that was my goal, write something I would like to read. Now it's a little harder because, for one thing, you've got to reintroduce your returning readers to your characters without boring them, because they know who Temperance Brennan is. They know who Andrew Ryan is. But you've got to also introduce them to the person that's the first time they ever picked up a Temperance Brennan book. So that's tricky. How do you do that? And I've had the books open where she's testifying on the stand and giving her, answering questions about her background. I've had her sitting in faculty meetings where she's bored to death and she's starting to write an autobiography. I mean, you got to try. You can't just, you could, but I think it would be a little boring to just do narrative. Temperance Brennan's a forensic anthropologist, blah, blah, blah. So that's more challenging. And how do you age your characters? I'm about to start the 21st book in this series. So clearly she's got to be 20 years older, but she's not. And some writers of continuing character series do age their characters in real time, and others don't. It's just a literary license you can take to either. So I've never been very specific about her age, but she hasn't aged very much throughout the series.
And how Tempe is inspired by you, like all the way. Was she like you at first and then she became someone else, or how did she?
I think both. I think professionally, she certainly mirrors me. Her passion for justice for the dead, her working in 2 different locations primarily, although she does get around. She's been to DC and she's been to Yellowknife and she's been to Guatemala and Israel. But anyway, she works in 2 main medical legal labs, which is what I do. The type of cases she does are the types of cases I have worked on. But she also had her sense of humor. I'm told we have a very similar sense of humor. But she's also her own person, especially in her personal life, her social life. She's not very good at relationships. She has difficulties with alcohol. She's a non-drinker. My friends will tell you that that's not me. So yeah, I did want her to be like me professionally, but her own person. And I wanted her to have flaws. She's not perfect. So that readers would find her approachable and real. So I couldn't draw on myself for that, of course.
Yeah. And also I remember, that you created strong and non-traditional feminine characters in those books. Does it reflect the people around you, or is it more like a statement?
It's both. I wanted, and especially in the young adult series I did, Virals, I wrote
with your son.
And we really wanted those to have an impact on young girls, to show them that going into science, technology, engineering, it's cool. Science is cool. So that was a very conscious effort in those books. Temperance Brennan, of course, yes, she's her own person. She's stubborn. She's a bit hard-headed, but she's smart. She's very smart, and she doesn't take any guff from. Does that translate guff? From men? But she's not abrasive. She's not, someone who's carrying the flagpole for feminism. She does so just by being who she is, hopefully.
Yeah. And you I have like a blank right now. I had a question, but I was thinking one of the characters that surprised me in the last book was Temperance's mom. Like, we don't often see an 80-year-old geek. That's pretty unusual.
Well, it's true. It's true. One time when and her mother has some issues also. I guess we might call it bipolar. So periodically she checks herself in somewhere. And it was during one of those visits that Tempe thought, well, I'm going to get her a laptop. She probably won't use it. I'll get her a laptop. And she gave it to Daisy, and Daisy loved it. She took every course she could find. And now she's one of these internet whiz kids who can hack and research and do she explains the internet and the use of websites to Tempe. She explained the dark web to Tempe.
Yeah.
And she is, I don't know if she's quite 80, but she's real close to 80.
Yeah, that's very refreshing, I think, because we usually see younger people being so good with the internet. So I thought that was good also to see a strong, maybe older character.
Yeah, and she's one of my favorite characters.
I like her. And tell me, there's also something that I saw, and I've always wondered, you have often very powerful technology that, for example, can identify corpses very quickly. Are those tools real? Are we there yet, or is it just fantasy?
We're talking about the books now or the TV show?
Actually, both.
Yeah, the answer to both is yes. The technologies that do exist, scanning I don't know which one you're referring to, but the one I'm asked about most is Angela's, what do we call it? The Angelotron, I guess. We started out calling it the Angelator, and then it became Angelotron. It's three-dimensional holoscopic reconstruction apparatus, I think it's called, and it does exist. Have I ever seen one in any police lab? No, but it's out there. And ground penetrating radar for finding bodies. Yes, that's existed for a long time.
Yeah, and you're talking about the TV show. Let's talk about that. What's the difference between writing a book and writing for television?
There are some similarities. The structure is similar in that you have your main storyline and then your secondary storyline, which the main storyline would be the mystery, the murder. The secondary storyline would be something in the social lives of your characters. You might have a third storyline too in some, which is maybe continuing an arcing story from episode to episode or book to book. So that structure is similar. One of the differences is that in writing a screenplay, it's almost all dialogue. You don't have to put in any description because the viewer is going to see that on the screen. So I remember the first time I received one of the scripts, it was only like 60 pages. And I expected, this big honking thing, but it really boils down to dialogue. One of the differences also is that in writing a screenplay, at least for our show, it's a collective experience. You first start out by going into the writer's room and all of you brainstorm ideas. There's a whiteboard, it's blank, divided for our show into 6 acts, and then you throw out ideas. Well, what about this? Let's do this. Let's do this. And together you do what's called breaking the story, and you break the story. And by the end of a week or maybe 2, that board is filled, with handwritten, your outline. And then each episode is written by a different writer in our show. So then whoever the writer is, you take that and you pitch it, and it has to be approved, which I'm not used to that for my books, by the showrunner. And then once that's approved, you're sent to write an outline, a very lengthy 10 to 15 single space page outline. Once that's approved, then you can actually write the script. And then once you write the script, you turn it in, and then they change everything, which I'm also not used to. But that could be for reasons you're not aware of, financial reasons, something you've written. I wrote one called The Dude in the Dam, and it opened with someone on an all-terrain vehicle hitting something, going airborne, crashing into a puddle of slime, which is left there by leopard slugs. And then there's a body in there covered with slime, leopard slug slime. Well, because that's how all of our stories began. There would be the opening scene where someone discovers a body squashed in the high school bleachers, or a body in a puddle of slime, or a body in a vat of red wine, whatever. Well, that got changed to 2 kids walking through the forest, and they see a beaver dam, and there's a body in the beaver dam.
That's different.
Well, You don't have to crash an ATV. You don't have to pay for the ATV. You don't have to have a stunt driver. You don't have to have the medics there because of the stunt. There's just a lot of things that come into play that as the writer, you don't necessarily know.
Is it frustrating sometimes to see that your stories are being changed that much?
Well, it's surprising sometimes. Why a beaver dam instead of, a TV crash? But you get used to that. That's just how television works. Maybe particular in our show, we had a lot of interns. Maybe the one you'd written in suddenly is unavailable and you have to substitute someone else. And that means you have to have changes. And
I think you worked with your daughter for that, right?
She and I wrote several screenplays together. Yeah, so I worked with my son writing the young adult series of books, and I worked with my daughter writing the screenplays. So that was enjoyable. And then if you're the writer, you're expected to be on set or on location for the whole filming, which for our show was 2 weeks each episode to film. So she and I would be out there in LA, and and then of course when you're out there to break the story, we were there together as well.
But now it seems to be over, or is there a new season coming up?
No. 12 seasons. We were the longest running scripted. We are the longest running scripted drama in the history of Fox Network. That's a long time for a scripted drama. I think the only one that beats us is The Simpsons. Well, that's animated though, so that's different category. That's a lot. That's 256 episodes. We did 22 episodes per season, which is a lot. So, but we're still out there. We're still on Hulu, and I forget. I just read that we're on one of those
in Quebec. Série plus.
Okay.
Série plus.
Okay, and then it's on English channels in Canada also.
So it's not dying, but you still have the fire to write books about this Tempe Brennan. How do you keep your inspiration?
Well, same as I'm not working in the lab so much. So now I do attend professional meetings, either virtually or in person. I still read our professional journals, Journal of Forensic Science, that kind of thing. I still interact with colleagues. I have a weekly meeting with 5 other women who are forensic anthropologists, and we toss ideas around. And of course, I also read the news. There may be some tiny little thing that appeals to me. The book coming out in July, in English in July anyway, is called The Bone Code. And it was kind of inspired by, I read a story about a Chinese doctor. We now have the whole human genome worked out. And there's now a tool called CRISPR, which can be used to edit the human genome. So that's scary stuff. It's exciting stuff, but it's scary stuff. And geneticists have pretty much agreed we're not going to do that. We're not going to create designer babies just because we can in the lab. And yet I read an article about a Chinese scientist who did just that. He modified the genome of 2 unborn baby embryos, girls. And I thought, well, there's an interesting idea for a plot. What if some rogue scientist, I don't want to give too much away, but So sometimes my ideas come from ripped from the headlines, as we used to say in the writer's room.
And do you have a little bit of inspiration by the pandemic, or it's not influenced at all?
Interestingly, no, because the book coming out in July, I started way before the pandemic. It hadn't, but it does involve a kind of pandemic. So it was sort of prescient, I guess is the word. Looking ahead without knowing I was, Yeah,
I think it's a different disease, though.
Definitely. And not
that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, we had a contest on Facebook with Le Salon du Livre where your fans could ask questions. So I picked one of them, which is the question of Charlene de Champlain. She wants me to ask you, what so far in your forensic career was your biggest challenge?
Oh, my biggest challenge, getting back and forth between the Carolinas and Montreal. The biggest challenge, I guess, getting board certified in today's world, because suddenly forensic anthropology, all the forensic sciences became very hot. somewhere back in the 90s. And a lot of people were hanging out their shingles saying, I'm a forensic chemist, or I'm a forensic psychologist, or I'm a forensic anthropologist, with absolutely no training in the forensic aspect of it. So all of the forensic sciences now have a process of board certification. You have to have a certain level of education. In anthropology, that's the doctorate. And then you have to submit your credentials and be accepted and sit for a big exam, both practical and written exam. And then you're board certified. So that was challenging to accomplish that. There weren't very many of us that were board certified. I think we're up now to over 100. So there's still not a whole lot of us, but yeah.
Oh, nice. So, well, thank you very much. I just want to tell people, remind them that La Mort Sans Visage, A Conspiracy of Bones is available in French. Your next book, The Bone Code, is not in French yet, but I think it's common. Do you know when it's going to be translated?
I don't. I think it's being translated right now.
Cool. And there's another one in the computer.
Yes, there's another one in the computer, which I will start working on as soon as we finish.
Well, you're very predictive. It's good to know that we do have lots of books to read from you. I hope you'll write for a long time, and also hope that you will come to Sept-Îles in real time, in person next time.
I would like that in a warmer season.
Yes, you're welcome in Sept-Îles anytime or anywhere in Quebec in the summer after the pandemic.
Merci.
Thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting and appreciated.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.